1498. It was the first opera built in Azerbaijan and in the whole East. Thus, Uzeyir Hacıbeyli laid the foundation stone of the art of professional composition in Azerbaijan in the early 20th century. Leyli and Majnun was the first stage of Uzeyir Hacıbeyli's creative way, as well as the first peak he gained in the art of music. A new type of opera, music, mugam, appeared due to Leyli and Majnun for the first time in the history. The name of the genre already emphasizes the important role of mugam in the composer's work. The sense of the word mugam opera reveals the convergence of Eastern and Western traditions. However, this is not an external fusion of mugam and opera forms of East, which have undergone a great evolution over the centuries. Thus, mugam, which is a professional musical art with an oral tradition, gave impetus to the formation of composers' creativity in Azerbaijan. Mugam and composers' creativity in Azerbaijan have been developing by interacting with each other until now. The first place where these two poles meet was Uzeyir Hacıbeyli's mugam opera Leyli and Majnun. In 1897-1898, when Uzeyir Hacıbeyli was still 13 years old, he watched a musical scan called On the Tomb of Majnun-Layli in his hometown, Shusha. This was a theatrical recitation of the last part of Fuzuli's poem Leyli and Majnun with mugam. The famous Azerbaijani writer and playwright Abdulrahim Bey Hagverdiev performed this musical scan with the help of well-known musicians of Shusha. The performer of the role of Mecnun was one of the most famous singers of his time, Jabbar Garyadlıoğlu. He was accompanied by the tar player Mirza Sadıkoglu. Children with good voices participated in choral episodes. Uzeyir Hacıbeyli was also among those children. According to Uzeyir Bey, this musical performance excited him a lot and was etched into his memory. The genius composer later wrote, "I started working on the opera in 1907, but this idea came to me long ago, when I was a child, in my hometown, Shusha, after watching the scan on the tomb of Majnun-Layli performed by amateur actors. That scan excited me so much that a few years later I decided to come to Baku and write something like an opera." According to another source, Uzeyir Bey expressed his feelings this way. About 1897-1898, I saw the scan on the tomb of Majnun-Layli in an amateur play in my hometown, Shusha. The scan excited me so deeply that I decided to write an opera. Let's go back to those years and watch the days and events. The opera is ready. First of all, it's necessary to create a talented cast of actors who understand the power of Fuzuli's poetry. Since the images of Mecnun and Leyli are the central images of the opera, Mr. Uzeyir thought of their successful choice. From the memories of Hüseyin Sarabski. One day, he played al-Mansur. In the last act, an Arab sings Sedai Gaibane, and I played that role. I sang Hijaz in Arabic. Üzeyir Bey Hacıbeyli was in the theatre that night. Feeling his mastery, the composer invited him to play the main role, Majnun. From the first performance, Hüseyin Sarabski justified the hopes of Üzeyir Bey. It was also a turning point in Sarabski's life in general. He later wrote in his memories that those who criticized me for being an actor at the time were now calling me Majnun. They greeted him with respect. The brilliant future of the famous singer, actor, director, musician, public figure Hüseyin Sarabski started with the image of Majnun. During his 30 years on stage, he played this role 400 times. Not only did he play, but he lived the philosophical world of this image, playing a new role in each performance. It was perfected with dates. Researchers are convinced that the masterpiece of this image in the opera was conducted by Hüseyin Sarabski. He was a truly legendary Majnun of the Azerbaijani skin. And now, let's look at this rare video. Sarabski is Majnun, accompanied by famous tar player Gurdam Pirimov. The words of the prominent literary scholar Aziz Sharif once again confirm this. Sarabski's performance was unprecedented. His songs flowed like a spring. Weeping, mourning, he spoke of his love, of his Leyli, of the immortal Mugam, with Fuzuli's ghazals. The music that worked in the most delicate veins of the human heart affected me so much that I could hardly choke, but my tears kept flowing. It was very difficult to find a performer for the role of Leyli at that time, because in the early 20th century, Muslim women were not allowed on the stage. Therefore, men played female roles in the theatre. For this reason, in the first performance it was necessary to find a person who could play the role of Leyli with a pleasant voice and a good knowledge of Mugams, who would match his appearance and, most importantly, his voice and ability. Abdurrahim Farajev, a 12-year-old tea-servant apprentice, was persuaded to play Leyli. That agreement, which was very difficult, was broken after the first performance, and the young man, who swore not to wear women's clothes, never set foot into the theatre. After long searches and thoughts, Üzeyir Bey decided to offer the part of Leyli to his aunt's son, Ahmad Bey Badalbeyev, a student of the Bakurial school. Ahmad Bey, who sang in the choir in the first performance of the opera, accepted the offer of Üzeyir Bey to play Leyli. The posters of the second performance, which took place in April, informed the role of Leyli Miri. The success of the Miri's first performance turned into the green line of his life, and later the poster informed Leyli Agdamski. He played the role of woman in all operas and operettas of Üzeyir Bey, Tahmina, Gülnaz, and others. He became a skilled performer of Asli, Gülçehra, Şahsalamin. There was no other way for the development of national culture. Üzeyir Hacıbeyli explained it as follows. My task was only to choose music from colorful mugams, rich in form and content, to the words of Fuzuli's poem, to develop a dramatic plan of events. It It should be reminded that the great Azerbaijani poet Nizami Ganjavi first wrote this poem Leyli and Majnun in the 20th century, referring to this immortal love story, which was widespread and loved in the East. Since then, more than 50 poets have created works on this topic. Among them are the Indian poet Amir Khosrow Dahlavi in the 20th century, the Iranian poet Dimadi in the 14th century, the Uzbek poet Alisher Navoiy in the 15th century, the Tajik poet Jami, the Turkish poet Chakeri. Nizami wrote his Leyli and Majnun at the age of 47 at the request of the ruler of Shirvan Ashita I. Nava'i did it at the age of 43 under the influence of Nizami's Hamsa, and Fuzuli wrote Leyli and Majnun at the age of 43 at the request of Kayali and Yahya Bey, Turkish poets, who came to Baghdad with the Sultan's army. This age is considered to be the beginning of the way to the life wisdom. 370 years later, Bey, who gave his life and soul from national folk music to Fuzuli's love story, was 22 years old. That age is a promise of youth, love, enthusiasm, and joy in the skies. Bey also approached this topic as a manifestation of love and gave this legend a musical stage life with the desire of his heart. The young Bey, who was spiritually attached to folk music, composed Leyli and Majnun and laid the foundation of opera for the whole Muslim East. The fame of the composer, who was able to feel the sublime beauty of Fuzuli's poetry and expressed it in his music, soon caused resonance. As a composer, he gave a specific beauty to the romance born of Fuzuli's genius combining with mugams and tasnifs coming from the hearts of the people. This great event was the beginning of further widespread success of Bey. The opera Leyli and Majnun did not have a score in the classical sense. This was replaced by a direction, a script plan showing the sequence of events and vocal numbers performed on the stage. Here the author's separate notes, notes of mugams, moods, instructions on dynamic signs were shown. In the first poster published in the Caspian newspaper in 1908, we read, "Opera in the Muslim language at the Tagiev Theatre, Saturday, January 12, 1908. The theatre department of the Nijat Muslim Cultural and Educational Society will present the opera Leyli and Majnun on the Muslim stage for the first time with the participation of authors and amateur performers. The play, which consists of 5 scenes and 6 figures, is based on a poem by Fuzuli and music by brothers Uzair and Ceyhun Hacıbeyli. The show starts at 9:13. The Eastern Orchestra will be conducted by Gurban Pirmev. However, on that day, the tar players refused to appear on the stage. In order to strengthen the orchestra, Uzair Bey, who was left helpless, replaced the tar with a violin 2 hours before the performance and made a note in the orchestra together with his friends. The tar players were Gurban Pirmev and Shirin Akundev. The authors of the opera are Uzair Bey and his younger brother, journalist translator Ceyhun Bey Hacıbeyli. Ceyhun Bey later wrote, "Writing an opera was the initiative of Uzair Bey. I am only interested in the selection of appropriate large volumes of Fuzuli's works and Mugham's. I helped him." Folk music, Mugham, songs, dances, and folk airs in the opera Leyli and Majnun has been skillfully used. Evleri var xana xana, bu gələn yara bənzər. In the girls' chorus, Rast and Chalgah, sang by al-Qays, Şikəstə Fas, Bayati Shiraz, Segah, as well as Shur, Simai Shams, performed by Majnun. Heyratı, performed in the overture of the opera and in Novel's part. Arazbare, percussion Mughams at the end of the opera and his snips on the way to the hearts of the spectators.
Ata ana eşkin hevası məni mecnun edecektir, məni mecnun edecektir.
In this work, they also uses those parts from the rich treasury of Mugham, which contributes to the general mood of the opera, corresponds to the nature of the images.
Mecnun'a benim kızım Leyla'yı.
Genius composer himself wrote about it. I intended to use Mughams, which are classic examples of folk art, as a musical material. My task was only to choose music from the colorful Mughams, rich in form and content to the words of the Fuzuli's poem, to prepare a dramatic plan of the events.
Sen tek geceler yanılsan ey zar, ben gece ve gündüzem giriftarım.
Leyli and Majnun combines a famous classical plot with real folk music. Uzair Hacıbeyli used Mughams in characterizing the images, embodying their inner world, feelings and emotions, and selected them with dramatic sensitivity for their character and emotional impact. Mughams play an important role in the consistent opening of the plotline of the work, in the description of the dramatic conflict and the tragic end of the events. For example, in the first act, the scene of Leyli and Majnun's meeting is based on the enlightening Mughams Mahur Hindi and Segah, which reflect their hopes and dreams, feelings of love. In the further development of the events, sad moods dominate in the part of the main heroes. Thus, the Shahnaz Mugam, which was sung after Majnun's envoys were rejected, reflects Majnun's deep emotional turmoil. Majnun, who wanders in the desert away from the people who do not understand him, is characterized by the sad Bayati Shiraz Mugam. After the wedding skein of Leyli and Ibn Salam, Majnun's despair is reflected in the Shushta Mugam. Majnun's cry, "You're not Leyli," which turned away from her lover and preferred her dream, sounds very burning in Karish Seygah.
Allah bu ne sitem, bu ne zulüm, bu ne sitem, bu ne zulüm. Eşkin oduna yandı, hicran sitemim kaldı.
Ben senin vefan buyumuş Leyli, buyumuş Leyli. Bir vefada yar olar mı? Bir vefada yar olar mı?
It should be noted that the choice of the Mugam department depends on the course of dramatic events and the mood and condition of the protagonist on the stage.
Ey gözüm yuş etmedin, pendü nasihatimi sen. Bir cinoyu namehrini saldın ettin özünü sen. Hasta bir naçar olmuşsan.
In this regard, for example, in order to create a fearless and courageous image of Nafal, a warlord who is not afraid to fight with his father to reunite Majnun with Leyli, the composer uses the enthusiastic, warlike marching music of the percussion Mugam Hiratı.
Yarın ilkiyen derip olur sene yar, ümidi var ol. Sen çekteyle ki yar, ola sana mail. Çün yar olsa mail, kar olur asan, kar olur
The singing of Chahagah Mugam at Majnun's father's part reflects his excitement for his son. The use of the Samai Shams Mugam section in the dialogue between Leyli and her mother shows the mother's excitement and concern. Gata Mugam expresses a cry of Leyli, who could not be reunited with her lover and married to someone else.
Düşsəgər dəfi olur qalbildirimi söndürməsi mümkündür.
In the last scan, while searching for Majnun-Layli's grave, the sounds of the Bayatic Khor Mugam expresses his endless sorrow. Majnun's performance of the composition section of the Shushta Mugam in his last breath is especially heartbreaking.
Canımı canana vermeydir Kemal yaşıdiyem Vermeyen can etiraf Etmek gerek noksanlar
Thus, Mugham becomes a driving force in the development of drama. It should be noted that in this case, the sequence of Mugham's first transitions are carried out at a logical pace. The opera Leyli and Majnun has been staged every season. The opera performances always took place as a completely full hall. On November 27, 1920, the Iqbal newspaper wrote, "When many people came to Baku from Derbent, Quba and other Caucasian cities, it became clear how much the Muslim population was addicted to music." Saravsky remembered those who wanted to watch the show offered the supervisor 5 and 10 ruble banknotes instead of tickets. They were told all the tickets were sold. "We do not want to know anything, we want to go to the theater, it's your money," they answered. The director of the theater lost his temper and did not know what to do. He turned to me for advice. I said, "Open the windows and let everyone listen." The curtains were raised, and the choir began to sing Shabi Hijran. There was a solemn silence. The music of the opera Leyli and Majnun has become a source for innovative traditions in Uzair Hajibali's search for a new national composition style and the process of mutual integration between the national intonation mode system and the minor major system. Using the elements of imitation polyphony based on Mugham performance and Arazbari Rai Mugham, Uzair Hajibali created a monumental symphonic music Arazbari intended as intermission music for the last stage of the opera. This intermission music is often performed as an independent work. It is noted that as a first example of the Azerbaijani symphonic music, Arazbari later played a key role in the creation of the symphonic Mugham genre. The composer, who later returned to this opera many times, improved its musical content while preventing its great musical aroma, style and genre. Uzair Hajibali prepared a new edition of the opera in accordance with the requirements of the time and thought about replacing Mugham parts with traditional opera forms. In those years, he wrote Mejnun's aria and added it to the part of the main character in the opera. After that, Hajibali wrote aria of al-Qays, Majnun's father. However, the composer later decided that the opera Leyli and Majnun should remain as a Mugham opera as the first example of the art of national music. Although al-Qays aria was not used in the staging of the opera, it was repeatedly performed and filmed by various artists as a separate work. This aria has been included in Bulbul's concert repertoire for many years. The libretto, piano, and the score of the opera appeared much later. Thus, the libretto of the work appeared in 1920, the piano in 1959, and the score in 1983. Researchers note that For the first time in the opera Leyli and Majnun, Üzeyir Hacıbeyli was able to combine Eastern and Western musical traditions and solve the problem of combining these two musical systems. In 2009, the 100th anniversary of the opera was celebrated in Azerbaijan by the decree of the President of the Republic of Azerbaijan. In the same year, the 100th anniversary of the opera was also celebrated at the UNESCO level. Until now, the opera Leyli and Majnun was presented more than 20,000 times in the various theaters of the world.